Do you ever feel like your relationship with your partner is a bit odd? Like something's not quite right, there's some weird dynamic going on, and you're not quite sure what it is, why it's going on, what to do about it, but it doesn't feel right to you. You feel like you're being pushed into a certain role or having to act in certain ways that you don't like, and maybe if you're getting arguments, it all seems a bit weird and you're not sure where is this coming from, and having disagreements about strange things that don't make any sense. Well, I'd like to share a few thoughts with you that might make you think about your whole relationship in a different way and give you some clarity. Because you have to remember, when we are growing up, right? When we are growing up, this is you, this is your partner. You watched your mother and your father, your mum and dad, growing up. They were your role models, right? And your partner had different role models, their mother and father. So as we're growing up, we're watching these people, because we can't talk, right? We're watching them, mum and dad, and we're copying them unconsciously. Most of how we act and the way we speak and what we do and what we think comes from our parents and people around us when we were 0 to 7. So our ideas about what relationships should be like and what they shouldn't be like and how people should relate come from here, right? So all this stuff from your parents and from their parents have gone into your psyche, right? Let's give you my example in my case, right, with my relationship. I'm copying my dad on some level about how I should act in a relationship, and I'm expecting my partner to be like my mother, right? Because I expect that women should be like this and act like this, and I should act like this. So I'm copying my dad and treating her like he treated my mother on an unconscious level, right? And then on this side, she's copying her mother and wanting me to be like her dad, right? So there's us down here. I'm not like her dad, and she's not like my mum, right? But I'm expecting her to be like my mother, and she's expecting me to be like her dad. Can you see how this is immediately a problem? Because you're basically putting, if you imagine your partner's dad or whichever way around it is, if you imagine them having a relationship, imagine you getting your parents and their parents together and everyone having a relationship with each other. Would that work out very well? Yeah, like if your dad had a relationship with her mum and your mum had a relationship with her dad, right, or whichever way around it is, would that work out? Just think about it. I can see that being a recipe for disaster personally when I think about that dynamic. But we've absorbed this dynamic into our being without even realizing it. This is unconscious. This is unconscious. This is down deep, way below the surface of our awareness. Right? So we wake up in the morning, we get on with things, we talk to people, and then we come into this strange dynamic where we're being expected to act like somebody else who's not us, and we're expecting them to act like somebody else, to act like our parents. So you've got this whole complicated dynamic going on, and this can cause loads and loads and loads of problems. And how do you deal with that situation? Well, the first thing is just knowing about it, looking at this thing here, realizing that this is connected to this is connected to this. They're all basically having a relationship with each other. When you start assessing the dynamic, when you look at the relationships, when you see people's parents together and see how they relate to each other, and you see your parents and how they relate to each other, and you just tune into the whole dynamic, and you just watch it, then you start to realize what is actually happening here. Just doing that in and of itself is a major eye-opener, because you think, wow, I'm being expected to act in a certain way according to somebody else. And I'm actually dealing with my spouse's mother on some level, and she's dealing with my dad on some level, right? So when we get into these connections, we take it all on, and act it out unconsciously. So in our head, we think, oh, I'm acting like this and I have these ideas and this is who I am and I'm just being myself. It's a very deluded way of thinking because we're not acknowledging how much unconscious stuff we have. On a real deeper level, we are copying patterns that we don't realize, and we are being expected to act in certain ways by the other person that we don't realize either. And we expect them to act in certain ways, and they're not doing that. So the whole thing has so many layers of complication that when you try and figure out what's wrong with your relationship or what needs to change, it can be very hard to figure that out unless you start addressing this stuff. And then you can actually say, all right, let us cancel this stuff. Let us not do this anymore, right? Canceling these agreements from these people requires a lot of consciousness because we have to first of all acknowledge, we have to own the fact that we have this going on. If we're in denial that this is happening, then we're never going to do anything about it. If we say, yes, I was programmed, because how could I not be when I was younger? Yes, I do have some unreasonable or unconscious expectations, and so do you. If both parties, both people can have that deeper understanding and that humility and that recognition and can actually acknowledge when they're acting out or what those things are and what all these things are that are going on, then we can say, it seems like we're acting out in this unconscious way again. Let's just let it go. Let's consciously create something new. Let's not take it personally. Let's not feel like I did anything wrong, you did anything wrong. Let's just bring it to light, shine the light on it, let it go, and then recommit to that new dynamic. Right? But the first step, before you can even do that, the first step is to just really look at your partner's parents' relationship, your parents' relationship, and think, what would it be like if these people were in relationship with each other? What would that be like? Right? It's a fun little practice. What would their relationship be like if you put them together, match them up? How would it go? Right? It would be a disaster probably. So maybe it wouldn't be. In some cases, I have a theory that some of the best and easiest relationships is because it actually would work out. If you put certain parents together, it would actually be a really, really good match, right? Because they're very similar and they get on. But a lot of people, it isn't a good match. And so all this is going on below the surface. What's really wonderful about this practice is that it allows us to have compassion, that when somebody is acting out in what seems to be selfish and unconscious, dysfunctional ways, we can realize it's not that they're doing it on purpose, they're not a bad person, they're not trying to cause us sorrow, they're not trying to be weird about things. They just can't help it. They just can't help it because it's coming up from a place that is not conscious. And so instead of getting irritated or confused and baffled, if you've ever been baffled in relationships, you're like, what on earth is going on here? That bafflement, that kind of like, what the hell is happening? It becomes less of a bafflement when you start looking at this. You start going, this is absolutely sensible, completely understandable behavior based on this dynamic. So it really provides a lot of compassion, a lot of insights, and also then once you know this, then you can start making some adjustments. Ideally, both you and your partner are both up for looking at this stuff and doing the work and being humble and being honest. Some cases, maybe only you're going to want to do this and they're kind of in denial or whatever it is. You can still make a lot of progress by doing the work on yourself and clearing out these things and even having conversations about it. And if they want to carry on the way they are and not acknowledge these things, then that's up to them. I'm always a fan of trying to resolve relationships as much as possible. I used to think that relationships were either good or bad, and there's nothing you could do based on this. But I've realized that we are actually our own people, and if we can deal with these things and resolve them and look at them, then we can actually have a relationship with us as we are, with the person as they are. It just sometimes takes a bit of effort. And I think the question to ask is it worth it to you? Is it worth it? After so many years, depending on how long you've been in a relationship, is it worth doing the work to make it work? Or is it something that isn't actually genuinely worthwhile? That's a very deep thing to think about. But wherever possible, I think if we can resolve these things, it's better, because if you get out of the relationship and get in another one, you're going to end up with this similar sort of thing. You might attract someone who has the same stuff that they have, right? So it's very, very common. People say, this person's terrible, and then they break up with them, and then they get in another relationship, and then a year later, they're like, oh my God, it's exactly the same. Because we're unconsciously seeking people that are connected to what our parental models are like. So, fascinating stuff, brings a lot of peace of mind, a lot of insight, a lot of compassion, and a lot of opportunity for personal growth and development. And my feeling is, why not deal with these things? Because we're otherwise going to have to deal with them in another way, with a different person or in a different situation. Why not deal with it and resolve it in the situation that we're in? So, if you find this useful, then I hope you can have some fun looking into these things, checking it out, and I hope your relationship experiences the highest level it can be, with lots of love and freedom and joy and peace. I hope this has been useful. Many blessings.